Good morning. This is Jason Dean. It's about 9:15. Hello YouTubers and fellow film fanatics. Hope everyone's doing good. It's Monday. It's we're kind of in the middle of the fall season here. Halloween just passed us by, and the weather has been pretty unusually warm. It's like been in the 70s. There was one day where it was almost in the 70s. I think it got up to 70 Saturday or Sunday, maybe yesterday. Just totally wild. I love it. I hope this weather will stay till if it could stay like this till May of next year. That would be pretty sweet. But hope everyone's doing good. Uh, I just I did a really fun video with my really great buddy and friend Emmett Layler, who uh, I've known, for countless, a number of years, and so and we've played music together. We've played music together now for probably about 5 years or so now. We've had he's an amazing musician. We play in a band called Split Willow. We and we did a show yesterday for this page. And by the way, if you like any of this crazy content that I've been uploading, please like and subscribe to the page. Really, greatly, it's greatly appreciated. And also, before I get into talking more about the show and the show yesterday, really want to give a big sense of of thanks and gratitude to the people who and all the folks out there who I know and folks I don't know who've been really supportive of this new venture of mine with my YouTube channel. It's been pretty awesome. I've been cranking out videos. I've been trying to, you know, keep it going. Like I've said before, I have a little bit of an easier setup now for doing these videos. Schedule wise, it's a lot easier, and also from a I guess you could say from a technical standpoint, I have a little bit of a better setup. So, and it's mainly due to my schedule now. I can really crank out the videos, and I've been able to get to a lot of movies that I wasn't able to for a while. When I was doing these videos, I was originally doing it, of course, like through Facebook Live videos, and then I made that transition to trying to pursue building up an audience on my YouTube channel. And I've had the YouTube channel for probably about a year or so, and I didn't really do much with it. And it was funny how I kind of got into YouTube or creating a video platform for YouTube. I I think it was maybe it might have, now that I think of it, it's probably been a few years. But I was you know actually it's probably been about 4 years, 3 or 4 years. Which is kind of crazy. But the second to last Quantum album that we put out, The Stars Beneath Our Feet, which came out about 4 years ago, which is hard to believe, and we just recently came out with June of this year. We came out with our fifth album, In Dreams I Saw Chapter One, and the soon to be released Chapter Two for that album. We recorded two albums back to back. So the first part, Chapter One, was released in June of this summer. So when I think it was around the time when our last album, second to last album, had come out, The Stars Beneath Our Feet, I was, trying to explore different ways of promoting, and by that time, YouTube's been around for quite a few years now, but I started noticing more and more things happening with YouTube as far as how bands were using it, and lots of bands use use YouTube for actual videos and interviews and live streaming concerts and performances. So I noticed, I don't know, I just kind of noticed that it seemed to have a lot more versatility to it. It was, you know, you obviously have this situation of where there's tons of music things on there, and sometimes you have to really sift through videos or content to kind of get good quality videos that videos that have a good audio or good video. A lot of the time, a good percentage of the content that's on YouTube is with from people's phones. The quality isn't really great, but there's been such an explosion with guys and girls being going on YouTube and doing movie reviews and music reviews and all kinds of things, and the content I think has gotten much better overall on YouTube, and the quality has gotten much better. And at the same time, it's also has gotten more competitive to a degree, because it's a little bit harder to get traction going with YouTube. You're kind of in this black space, and you need to really dial it dial it in as far as content and sharing and all those things, and that can seem really intimidating. But I've been just going at this baby pace, with baby steps. Um, and I remember around when that album came out, "The Stars Beneath Our Feet." I have at the time, and I still do, for Quantum, my electronic band. We have a couple of pages that a couple of social media platforms that I use. I'm not usually a super heavy duty social media guy, and sometimes that's just out of laziness, and then sometimes I'm just not really so fired up by all of the possibilities, or all of the work that sometimes involves. You know, we we have a record label, Berenice Records, that's been around for quite a few years. So we did have a website. The website has been down due to lots of unforeseen circumstances, and we have Berenice Records Facebook page. Um, for Quantum, we have a Bandcamp page for Quantum where most of our albums, actually two of our albums, are on there. The rest of our albums are all on SoundCloud, and I'm in the slow process of eventually putting the rest of the albums, because we have about 5 albums out now, and I'm going to put the other 3 albums, the first 3 Quantum albums, eventually I'm going to put all of that stuff on Bandcamp. But so I had Bandcamp going, and also Bandcamp's relatively new. I really love Bandcamp. I think they have a great, I think they provide a really great service, and it's a lot less fuss. I think artists can actually make a little bit more money off of Bandcamp as opposed to Spotify and various other social media platforms or digital platforms. I do have a Twitter account for Berenice Records. I also have Reverb Nation. So I had quite a few, and then I had set up a YouTube channel. I was trying to figure out how to expand the publicity for that album, particularly around that album, and trying to gain a little bit more knowledge and try to get a few more tools in the toolbox as far as trying to beef up sales and publicity for the album and for the band. And so but I sat on this YouTube channel for quite a while. I didn't really upload anything to it. I didn't really have anything that I felt was good, and then blah blah blah. And then eventually I started concentrating. The last 2 years I started putting more work into the Film Fanatic page. We started, and I've had the Facebook page for a long time for Film Fanatic, and then just this past year I started an Instagram page. And then also I had these ideas of, well, maybe I can start up a YouTube channel and have it centered on film, but then also because I always talk about the deep connection between, for me, and film and music, and especially with my band Quantum, how much that is a, you know, the primary source of inspiration, really. How I could, bring those things together more to the forefront, and share my, my experiences, for what have you, and kind of where I want the music to be, or the band to eventually be, and just show like the combination of, not only films that I love but that are very inspiring to me, but then also show how it is a an integral part to me as an artist, if you want to call it that. So I kind of joined all that stuff together, and then I eventually started doing the YouTube videos for Film Fanatic, where I was trying to make that transition of getting away from doing the Facebook thing to building up this channel. So I've been doing that ever since. And originally, when I used to do the videos, I used to do them back back in the Facebook days. I used to do them on the weekends. I used to do them, typically on a Saturday. And originally, I would do them really. I spaced them out quite a bit, where I was doing them maybe once or twice a month. The primary the primary focus was just doing posts about films that I love. And then I realized, well, okay, maybe if I do this a little bit more with the video, that could increase, and it could be more of a fun, kind of interactive thing. And so I started doing it, and I noticed that there was a lot more traction. And then eventually, I was kind of not so happy with the quality of some of the videos, and mostly from a technical standpoint. So I got a little bit of a better setup. Had gotten a new laptop and got a pretty nice microphone, and so I started doing more videos. And then my schedules changed quite a bit from the summer, so I decided to change the whole format. And now, with my schedule being the way it is, I can do the videos a lot more frequently. And I noticed, since I've been cranking out the videos, that it's really helped the channel grow and the pages grow. And I feel like, for me, it's been a really great. I learn every time I do a video. I feel like I'm learning something else, about how to, for the next time, how to, hopefully articulate something a little bit better, and to, really try to give, for what it's worth, to try to give a little bit of a different spin on, and getting away from, like, say, typical movie film reviews, still having that intact and still having that as the focus, but trying to maybe approach things from a little bit of a different angle, incorporating music ideas, and how that's all related. So it's mainly due to my schedule change. I've been cranking out a lot of videos, and I noticed that, some of the videos I've been putting out have been getting, tons and tons of hits. And some videos, which I've been really surprised, because still the majority of the movies I do are, pretty underground, kind of exploitation horror films, pretty obscure films. And I've noticed a few of them have gotten like thousands and thousands of hits. So I really want to thank people for checking out this weird thing that I do and supporting it. And I'm gonna just keep, cranking it out. And I have all kinds of new ideas that I'm gonna be expanding on and trying to incorporate into the show to make it grow more. So it's been a total blast. And yesterday I did a show with my really great friend Emmett Layler, where I play music with. I've played with him, in a few different bands for probably the last 5 or 6 years. I've known him forever. He's a really great friend, super, one of the most talented guys I know, and he is a fellow film fanatic. He really has a deep love for all things horror, and in particular, his one of his biggest loves is everything, and anything kind of related to Stephen King. So I thought, why don't we do a show, maybe, together, where I could interview him, because he's got a real deep knowledge of Stephen King, but then also horror, and he's a very well read person. So thought that would be an interesting take. And he's a great buddy, and we've known each other for a long time. So bring that all together. Plus, we play music together. So so we did a show yesterday on everything related to Stephen King, and it was great. I had a blast doing it. We did the show at his apartment, and I just brought my some of my gear over, and we just recorded the show there, right in his living room, and pretty excited how it came out. And he was wonderful. He was a wonderful guest, and a lot of cool things we talked about. We kind of talked mostly about Stephen King or uh, things related to what he has done or is doing, but we I feel like we mixed in a lot of other things. We talked a lot about where technology is now with streaming, how that's affecting for good or bad, how that's affecting the film industry. We talked about even technical things, like we talked about like practical effects that are used in films now, as opposed to like back in the 70s and 80s when it was a predominant thing. And we also talked with that about practical effects along with like CGI, which is the newer technology that's used for most Hollywood films, particularly particularly around action films or horror films. So we got into a lot of different things, and so it was very cool. So I really appreciate it. I just uploaded the video last night, and I really appreciate people checking out the video, and it was a blast. So we're gonna we'll do some more shows like that. I have three other shows planned that I'm going to be doing as far as interviews. So pretty excited. One show I'm going to do, which I'm hoping will happen this week, which I'm really really excited. I'm going to be getting one of the actresses who was involved with the Friday 13th franchise. Super excited about that. So stay tuned for that. That should be hopefully, fingers crossed, will be happening this week. Super super stoked about that. And so gonna try to pursue the interview thing a little bit more. I really enjoy that. I really love the interactive exchange of ideas and trying to bring people in who have a different background or have a different perspective than I do, but yet there's a commonality. So I really love that exchange, and I think it makes for a fun kind of conversational piece. Like, and I feel like that's the chord we kind of struck yesterday, Emmett and I. So stay tuned for that. So one other show I'm going to do, and I brought it up. It was funny. I brought it up. I'd gone out to dinner yesterday with my family and a couple of close friends. My great friends Daniel Richmond and Jillian Reed, who are really pretty much my best friends, and they are so supportive of all of these weird things I do, between the Film Fanatic stuff and the quantum stuff that I do, and also the other projects that I do. But they're particularly very, very supportive around the original stuff I do with the Film Fanatic stuff and the quantum stuff. They're just tremendously supportive of that, and also with Daniel Richmond, my great friend Daniel, he has a real big background in social media. He's probably the most versed guy that I know as far as tech stuff goes. So he's really played an integral part for me as far as kind of pushing me along or encouraging me to take some risk and try some new things, and to really try to expand upon this thing that I love doing. So, just really great. So it was funny. We all went out, my mom and dad and those guys, we all went out for dinner last night. And, you know, and we were just like, kind of shooting the shit and talking and stuff. And somehow came up about, having my mom on the show, like have my mom as a guest on Film Fanatic, where I would interview her for this page. And I remember, I don't know if I think it might have been Daniel, it might have been me. We were, just kind of goofing around, and it came up. And I remember my mom kind of looked at me when that came up, like, didn't completely didn't take me seriously. She was just like, "Oh, you're just goofing around," kind of thing. And so it was funny because after dinner and we all left, I came home and was checking out the video that I recorded that day with Emmett and watched the movie and just kind of relaxed. And I was pretty excited with how the video came out, and we just kind of did it in one take. We tried to keep it really loose, but I kind of thought, you know, I always analyze the videos I do, and I notice certain things I do like pretty well, and then certain things I don't do very well. So I'm always trying to correct how I do things. I do the same thing with music. I'm always trying to, if I get recordings of myself or whatever it is, I'm always trying to expand and trying to better uh, how I'm doing it because you never stop learning. I have a really hard time or problem being complacent doing certain things. So I kind of try to always push myself. I put pressure on myself, but at the same time, I try not to take it too seriously, but yet it's something I'm really passionate about, so I want to get better at it. So, but it was funny. So I came home last night watching the video that we'd recorded and just kind of unwinding or whatever after dinner, and then I started thinking. A couple hours later, I was like, oh, I started brainstorming about maybe some new interviews I could do, and then like a light went off, and I was like, you know what? I think that might be a really great idea to have my mom on the show because it's kind of silly and kind of funny, but at face value. But then I thought about what that could be and what that kind of means, and I was like, oh no, that would be aside from that kind of initial thing where it's kind of silly or funny to have your folks on the show. I thought, well, no, that would be actually a really great idea because, I mean, she gave birth to me, but then it was really due to her when I was a kid, raising me and my dad. She introduced me to film. She introduced me to horror films and everything kind of related to that. That's how I grew up watching, slasher films and, she was my big introduction to Alfred Hitchcock, and you know, and it was during the time of the heyday of the Friday 13th franchise and Nightmare on Elm Street and all the great slasher movies that came out, and back when you could go to the video store, and she always loved a lot of horror films, and so we used to watch those movies together all the time. And I know most parents these days don't really do that kind of thing. It's not, I don't know, politically correct, but she used to let me watch all kinds of stuff. And we used to go to the movies a lot to see horror films. So it was really like, kind of how I developed, that was like my formative, that developed my formative, uh, that was my formative years, and that helped shape, the weirdo that I've become. So I was like, no, that would be totally awesome, and she has a real deep love of film, and she's pretty passionate. She's pretty knowledgeable about a lot of those films, particularly the old school ones, and Alfred Hitchcock. So I thought, yeah, I'm gonna talk to her about doing a show together. So I think that would be pretty fun. Um, and another idea I have is I teach drum lessons privately, and I have a student that I just started working with probably about 5 or 6 months ago. This guy Ray, he's a super cool guy. He's such a character, and we meet every Monday, and super super cool guy, and he's really he's got this cool like kind of intensity about him, and he's really passionate about a lot of things, and he's got this really interesting background, and so I think it was like the second or last time that we had a lesson. He had mentioned that I know we started talking about movies, and he had mentioned that he had a background, you know, uh, as an actor for a while, and he worked as an actor for where he would act in these like pretty low budget films. He did some extra work, but then he said that most of the work he was doing, he worked with a lot of these independent, like real, small, independent directors and writers, and he did a lot of like kind of starring roles. And I was like, wow, like no way, that's crazy. And I remember we were talking about that for a while, and at the end of the lesson, I was asking him, is there, are there any, is this stuff available to see? Is it, can you see it anywhere? So he gave me a little list of different things he's done, and I made a little list, and then a week or two went by, and I finally sat down and searched out the stuff, and I came across a few of these movies that he starred in, and I was like, these are great, these are awesome, and they're very much in line with a lot of the films that I kind of cover on this channel. They're like these, super low budget kind of modern horror grindhouse movies, and they're all one of the movies I did a show on a while back, Suburban Sasquatch, which I think is one of the greatest movies ever. It's a movie that was shot on video, and it's this whole like kind of, and Suburban Sasquatch is a pretty recent movie, but it's like uber low budget. It's super cheesy and terrible, but just amazing. But it's like kind of a modern grindhouse film, but it was also shot on video. And when I got into this movie and discovered it, and I heard about this whole other genre going on, or that's a thing, I started realizing, wow, there's this whole other subgenre in horror where there's all these underground filmmakers making, and these are all like pretty modern uh, artists, directors. There, there's like this whole other style now of shot on video, where there's a ton of filmmakers that are doing that kind of work, and like Suburban Sasquatch is kind of looked at as like, you know the the big one, the big fish for that genre, like so. And when I watch Ray's videos, and when I tracked down his movies that he was working on, and some of the clips, it totally was like shot on video, and it was like these uber low budget, kind of pieces, and I was like, this is great. So I had this other idea of getting him on the show and doing an interview with him, and and again, we have a connection with music, but he's working, he's got this background on working on these like uber low budget films, and there's quite a few of his videos out and clips and movies on YouTube, and it was a super cool discovery. So that's another show that I'm gonna talk to him about getting him on the show, because I think that would be super cool. So yeah, lots of cool ideas that I've been thinking about coming up with. So this brings me. So this was I believe the third. Yeah, this was the third franchise that I've covered for Film Fanatic. First franchise I did, which was a really big one. I did, the entire Friday 13th franchise. And then I did the movies that kind of were the spin offs of the franchise. And I did everything, covered all the movies that were tied to the Friday 13th universe. And that was a lot of fun. And it took me about 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks to kind of get through everything and to get everything posted, and with the reviews, and then also the videos, and it was a lot of work, but it was super fun. And I watched literally every movie back to back, and the whole thing took about 2.5 weeks to kind of get all together, as far as the video, actually seeing their movies, but then getting through all of the recording the videos, uploading them, and then also doing separate posts of each movie, and also the videos. And that was super fun. And then the last franchise I did was the Halloween franchise. Friday 13th was a little bit different because I pretty much have, that's my favorite horror franchise. So I love all the movies, even the bad ones. I covered every movie. I covered everything that was tied to the franchise. So like every one of those movies I love a lot. So with the Halloween, it's pretty mixed for me. Overall, like, so I started watching all of the films. I kind of followed the same method, where I started with the original, the iconic Halloween from 1978 from John Carpenter. I started with that one, and just worked my way up, and I watched all of them. And then and then I finished up with actually going to see the last one, Halloween Ends. I saw that in a theater, and and it was great. I liked some of the movies more, especially the ones kind of in the middle area of the franchise. But at the end of the day, I still had this deep appreciation for about three or four of the movies that I really, really loved, and I was, generally fired up about, more excited about than the others. So I decided, well, I'm just going to focus on the movies that really got me excited. So that's what I did. I took like three or four of those movies, uh, and then I ended with Halloween Ends, which I was super surprised by how unique of a movie that was. So I concluded the franchise review for Halloween with that movie, and that was a lot of fun. And then I had this other idea. So this is the third franchise where I decided to change things up a little bit and go back to focusing a little bit on my real deep love of Marvel movies and comic book movies. So I did decide to do a series on the Avenger movies, and huge Avengers fan. It's definitely my favorite franchise as far as uh, anything and everything related to Marvel. I love the first one. I did a great uh, big show on the original. The only one I there's four movies total, but the only one I did not include, which I'm not really a big fan of, is the second one, which was Age of Ultron, which I felt like was pretty anticlimactic. It was kind of clunky. Um, it was super predictable at times. It didn't really take you on that journey of where you couldn't see things coming, and it was wicked anticlimactic. And I thought the villain was really kind of subpar. It was kind of it felt like it was undercooked or something. So it's got some good things to it, I guess. But and eventually I'd see it again. But I've only seen it once or twice. But it's not a movie I remember seeing it in the theater, and I never and I think I this might have been the only time I've seen it. But I love the other movies tremendously. Eventually I just recently got Endgame on Blu-ray, and I remember going to see Infinity War in the theater and just was completely enthralled and blown away by that movie. Um, so love that movie. And so this is the last show for that franchise. So it's three movies: the original Avengers, the Infinity War, and now with this show, it's going to be Endgame. And Endgame, it's hard to believe the Endgame came out in 2019 already. It's like almost 4 years ago already. It's just like time is such a strange thing. Um, the interesting thing that's different with these films too, Josh Whedon directed the very first Avengers film. Josh Whedon's mostly well known for directing like Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Firefly, Serenity, really great. Cabin in the Woods, which is an amazing movie. He's a really talented guy. He's got some things I feel like in his career where they're pretty hit or miss. Like he did one of the Alien movies in the Alien franchise, which is I think not so great. But he's done some things that are not great. But overall, I'm a big Josh Whedon fan, and he directed the first uh, Avengers movie, and just it's an amazing. I think it's a masterpiece. And for Infinity War and also Endgame, Marvel went with two different directors, the Russo brothers, Anthony Russo and Joe Russo. And these guys are next level. I feel like these guys are next level directors. They are incredibly passionate about what they do. I think they are um, incredibly knowledgeable of the whole mythology around everything Marvel. And I feel like with their films, uh, with Infinity War and Endgame, they really show that love and that passion in their filmmaking. They're just amazing films. And considering too how complex it is, with where you have literally, 50 to 100, 50 to 100 characters on the big screen, and how you're able to, augment and have a really great storyline and give everybody their proper due, and provide a great story and provide amazing action, it's pretty miraculous what these guys have done. And they also like directed both movies like basically back to back with Infinity War and also Endgame. They literally shot these movies back to back. And Infinity War is close is like 2.5 2 hours and 20 minutes, and Endgame is a full 3 hours. And I remember going to see Endgame because I'm a huge fan of Infinity War, and I'm like, how are they going to top this off? What are they going to do? And I remember going when I saw Endgame. I've seen them all in the theaters, all the films, and I remember going to see Endgame in the theater, and I'm like, wow, like how is this going to go? One of the things I loved about how Endgame starts was they really showed. We're backing up a little bit with Infinity War. Thanos gets all of the Infinity Stones, who's like the uber super villain in the universe, pretty much the most badass villain. And he's a titan. He's essentially a god. He's got this godlike power, and he acquires these stones, the Infinity Stones, that are basically stones that basically create balance in the universe. And whoever acquires them basically can change the course of history and can manipulate time and whoever acquires these stones can become the most like basically the most powerful entity or being in the entire like galaxy. And so this happens with Infinity War, where Thanos acquires all the stones and basically destroys half the civilization. And he's a genocidal maniac. And but he's a very complex character too. I feel like he does have a passion. He you know he does feel like he has a purpose and there is a path he needs to be on, and he feels like in his own sick kind of demented way of functioning or how his brain is, he feels like he is actually doing something that will provide this greater good for balance in the universe. So he rationalizes it that way, even though he's killing billions of people and just causing complete destruction and genocide at a like a scale that no one has ever seen ever. And with Endgame, it's amazing because the way the film starts off, I remember going to see it in the theater. I'm like, how are they going to top this off? And I remember within the first 5 or 10 minutes, the Avengers eventually find Thanos the after he changes the course of the universe and basically annihilates everyone. And and I thought like how Endgame starts, it really shows the ramifications of what happened, and seeing that there's like billions of people now destroyed and killed, and everything being disabled, all kinds of structures like countries and governments and whole worlds being sent into chaos. They really show that, and you get this emphasis of like, wow, how awful things are and how depressing things are in the aftermath of what really happens after Thanos acquires all of these Infinity Stones. And I felt like with Endgame, they really, the first half of that film, they really show that. They show like the aftermath, how, you know, how people are still trying to cling on and trying to kind of live their lives, even with all this, unprecedented death and destruction. And and it's amazing too because the Avengers eventually track down Thanos, and he has basically accomplished what he needed to do, but to a degree, the Infinity Stones are now rendered powerless. His quest was achieved, so now he feels that there was a balance struck in the universe, and he was victorious. But at the same time, he feels like it was his destiny. But he also has to he becomes closer to being somewhat of a mortal creature, and he ends up living this kind of quiet, solitary life, and he doesn't have the power that he once had after this happens. so the Avengers eventually find him, and within 10 minutes of the movie, they find him and they track him down, and they go after him, and they kill him, and they cut his head off. Thor comes in and cuts his head off, like literally, within 10 minutes of the movie. And then and I going into the movie, I knew it was long. I knew it was like 3 hours, and I'm like, where the heck is this gonna go? Like, I couldn't believe that happened. It was like shocking, and I'm like, and then there was this level of like, I have no idea where this is gonna go. And then they introduced all this real heavy science fiction element of. It's one of the reasons I love the Avenger movies, and I'm such a huge fan of Thanos. I am a child of Thanos. He's my favorite villain of all time. Right, Darth Vader being a close second. But I love because it's at like the film and the whole narrative of the story and the scope. It's very, uh, it's got a very science fiction kind of oriented thing, and it's at this epic level, and it's like this cosmic kind of thing, and I love that aspect of it, and it really gets into that with Infinity War and also Endgame. And I remember the way the story evolved and where things moved to where, they had elements of time travel, elements of Star Trek, Back to the Future. It was pretty miraculous what they did, and I felt they took something that I did not ever see coming, and they moved this whole story in this totally different direction, and it was just amazing. And plus the action, I feel like the action sequences, as much as I love Affinity War, as a whole, I almost feel Endgame is actually a better movie. Like, it's really amazing. Like, there's a lot of heart and soul in it, and then the action is just like completely insane. And I feel like it's like, the love letter for Marvel. Like, it really is for, especially around the Avengers. An amazing movie. And I recently just picked this up on Blu-ray, Endgame, and I've only seen this movie once. I saw it in the theater just once. I haven't seen it since then, and I was completely blown away by it. I loved it. Uh, so I watched it again last night, finished it up, and same thing. And I kind of, even though I'm such an Infinity War fan, and that to me is like probably the greatest Marvel movie, I kind of say, I kind of feel like after watching Endgame, I kind of feel like as a whole and as a movie, Endgame is probably the best movie. It's even better than Infinity War, which is hard to imagine. So this concludes this franchise where I was covering, in this series of the Avenger movies. So thanks again for checking this out, and definitely check these movies out. I really enjoyed watching all of these movies in succession, with the exception of Age of Ultron. It was really great. I realized too after watching them all in succession how great and cohesive the stories are for each movie. Tremendous, and the timeline and everything just wonderful. So this is Jason Dean. Please like and subscribe to this page if you get a chance, and I really appreciate you guys checking us out. And we'll see you next time. Peace.